Hello, good evening. My name is Patience Agbese, and it's a privilege to be standing here doing this today. I don't take it for granted. I'm not the best teacher in the world. I aim to learn every day, and I know that the only reason why you want to do this is not because you don't know how to do this, but there's always a better way to do it, or there's always a need to learn a lesson or two every time. Now, the video we're about to shoot is an amateur video done by me and my 11-year-old son, who is behind the camera. He's good at making videos that making pictures that are very blurry. So forgive me if this video doesn't come out looking as you expected it to look, but I am sure that we'll be able to learn a thing or two from this video today. So a few days ago, I promised that I was going to teach you how to cut a basic short, which is popularly known as a knicker. From this video or this class, you'll be able to cut a trouser, three-quarter trouser, or a palazzo pants using the same method that we're about to use. Now, assuming that everybody who indicated interest in wanting to learn this already has a basic idea about tailoring, this is because we're not going to be showing how we're going to be making this trouser in terms of putting the pieces together. We're just going to be patterning this short. So you're able to cut a short knicker, a short, a knicker, a three-quarter trouser, a long trouser, or a palazzo pants, depending on what you want to make. So we begin. Now, the only things I'll be needing for this video would be this piece of paper. It's actually a tracing paper. It's A1. I use it to pattern when I'm not making something large. A T-square, my scissors, my tape rule for my measurements, my safety pin to hold it together while I cut, my French curve, which might not be necessary for this class that we're about to do. Now we begin. I'm going to have to put a straight line. This is because I like to begin all of my measurements with a straight line, so I don't have any uneven lines. Now, basically, in order to make anything you're making, it will be important to take an accurate measurement of the person who you're making the trouser for. This is because the African body is a very fantastic piece of work that defies all conventional measurements. This is because most African women are very endowed, and we have more people who have bigger lower bodies than the upper body. Take an example, myself. My measurement is very unconventional, and I don't fall in the category of any of the conventional dress charts, sizes, or guides. This is because my waist is 36, my bust is 39, and my hips is 48. Fantastic, right? So what we're about to do this evening is that we're going to be making a made to fit using whatever measurement that your client or your body is, but we're going to be using a method that allows you get these measurements right, because just a few details might spoil the whole of your work. Now, before we begin, I'd like you to know that when you're taking your measurement, it will be important to take the measurement of your waist, the distance between your waist and your hips, and the length of the trouser that you're about to make. If it's a short, it will just be your waist, the length of your waist to your hips, and then the length of the short you're making. If you're making a three-quarter trouser, you would need to put the length of your knee, and then the length of where you want your trouser to end, whether it's a full pant, palazzo, three-quarter, or whatever kind of trouser you're making. So since my waist, from my waist to my hips on the average is 9 inches, and then the length of the trouser, the short I'd like to make for myself would be 16 inches. But because I'm going to be attaching a band at the base of my short, I'm going to make this measurement 14 inches. That is because by the time I begin to fix, I will affix my 2 inches at the base of the trouser. So I'm going to put a measurement of 8 inches instead of the 9 inches, which would have been the basic measurement from my waist to my hips. This is because there's going to be a 2-inch band at the top of my trouser. Now, because of that 2-inch band, I am deducting 1 inch from whatever my basic measurement would have been from my waist to my hips. So we begin. So this is 8. Now, usually the confusion for a lot of people with pants is the crotch. They don't know how to calculate how to make the crotch as close fitting as possible. Now, what I do is, if I'm making a pant for anybody whose measurement, hip measurement is between 30 and 40, what I will use is 1.5 inch from the distance between my waist and my crotch. If I'm making a pant for somebody whose hips is between 40 and 50, I would use 2 inches. Notice that I have added 1/2 inch. This implies that if the measurements go up, I continue to add 1/2 inch for every 10 inches of the measurement that increases on the hips. Which means that if the person is smaller than 30 inches around their hips, I would have to deduct 1/2 inch as well. Do we have that? Good. So the 2 inches, since it's my measurement and my hips is 48, I fall between 40 and 50. So I'm using 2 inches, and then this is my 14 inches where my measurement ends. I'll do the same measurement here, and then I would rule the lines together so I have a straight line. Having done this, now this is where my measurement will begin. But instead of allowing my measurement to begin from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 inch, a 1 inch mark. This is assuming that this line is a straight line. In most cases, I am sure that when you're doing this, your lining is going to be folded into 2. Remember? So this is it. So I'm going to have to measure 1 inch from this point, right? And I'll tell you why. Now I'm very curvaceous, and because I'm curvaceous, my trousers always has the marks of the hips. So I'm going to slant from this point to this point, and slant from this point to this point, right? Now this would give me some curve. I am ruling to ensure that it's not a straight line. Remember I said that I would not need a French curve. If I was doing this, I could use a French curve, but it's not compulsory should you not have a French curve. Now I have found the curve of my hip. I'm going to put a 1 inch sewing allowance from this point, which will serve as my allowance for sewing, right? And then I'm going to join the lines. Remember, I'm going to do the same thing I did as the last time, because I don't want my lines, sorry, this is my dining, and so it's not ideal. So I'm going to ensure that this too is not completely straight, so I have a curve, right? Now, when you're entering measurements for this, the only part of the body which should be divided by 4, because this is folded into 2, remember, 1, 2, and then for the back we'll have another 1, 2. So we're dividing all of our measurements, not all of our measurements, our waist and our hips by 4, and then our thighs will divide by 2. Now this is because your waist is round your body, your hips is round your body, but your thigh is divided. You have 2 thighs, and so each measurement will be divided into 2 and not 4. So now my waist is 36, so I'll take 36 on the tape, and then I'll fold into 2 and fold into another 2, which will leave me 4, right? Folded into 4. Having done this, I'll do the same for my hips, which is 48. Divided by 4 as well. Notice that I don't bother to use a calculator to check what that is. My tie, on the other hand, is 31 inches. So I'm going to do 31 divided by 2. Now, the measurement of my tie is what I'll enter as the measurement for my crotch. Right? At the point of my crotch, I enter my tie. Right? And now the length of the circumference of my tie will be dependent on the measurement I've taken. Now, because this is mine, it's easy for me to decide what that is. And I'll be using 29, which means I've taken off 3 inches off of my original measurement of my tie. Right? And then I'll put another sewing allowance. Here, the crotch, my hips. But on my waist, I am going to leave 1 inch for that. And then put 2 inches for my flap. My flap is the flap that hides the zip, and I will tell you why. Now, in order to find my dart, what I'll simply need to do is take my measurement between my original start point and where my real measurement is and divide by 2. And since I have 9 inches, my dart will be at 4.5. Remember, original measurement, not inclusive of the allowances added. Now, in order to bring out my trouser, I'm just simply going to connect these dots, and then I'll explain something shortly. Now, in doing this, I would not go and connect my trouser directly like this. This is because if I did this, I'll have an excess around this point that would now make me have something called an omata, that free flow around the crotch area that you don't want to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this using this. So this will allow me get this done like this. Remember, it allows me take off the excess that is around here. And then I'm going to measure from this point down 6 to 7 inches depending on whose pants you're making. And since this is mine, I'm using 6 inches because I am big, and I'm going to go so when I fold it at the end of the day, I would have my flap that would be the overlap, that would be the cover over my zip. So this is it. I'm hoping that you're able to see and understand what I have just explained. Should we have any questions, please feel free to leave your questions and your clarification on the comment sections, and then we're able to tackle all of that. Now I'm simply going to put my pin, and then we would cut out. Remember, if I connected this to go like this, I would have this excess. That would be a problem for me at the end of the day. Now remember that if you wanted to make a trouser, or you wanted to make a 3/4 trouser, all you would need to do is put in the measurements for your knee, your waist to your knee, and then the full length of whatever trouser you're making to achieve that. Now, in order to make a palazzo trouser again, the difference will be that since this, because I had put the measurement of what I wanted to be the tightness of my trouser, I had it slanting like this. But if it's a palazzo, it would simply go straight. And if you want a very flowy palazzo, what I do is I don't open it from the inside, because this is the mistake that we make. If we're to open it to have a flay from the inside, we'll have an excess around the crotch area and the palazzo would not look good. So what I will do is, if I'm making a palazzo, I will simply open it from the hip down all the way, as much as I want it to be open. That way, all of my excess is by the side and it's not disturbing what it looks like. in the middle. So now that we're done with the front, I'm going to show you how to cut the back. Now the front is what determines how the back turns out, and so this is really easy. Another thing to note is, now I have placed my front over this plain sheet that I'm going to cut the back with, right? Now I have a lot of hips, as in I'm very hippie. So because I am hippie, the allowance that I'll need for my hips will be more than somebody who is slim. For somebody who is slim, what you simply need to do is, for just like we did with the size methods of half an inch, adding half an inch from the beginning, we'll just simply deduct or add as the case may be. For somebody who is slim, they're regular, what you will do is you add half an inch from this point, right? And then slant it all the way, let it meet at exactly the same point with the waist high up there, and then let it slant again and meet at exactly this point at the bottom. Or you will just do half an inch all the way, depending on whether you want your pants to be tight or free. Now for me, I will do 1.5 inch right? So this is my hip. I would ensure that I rule a line that meets at my hip, right? So if I'm cutting, this is what I usually would do. I will rule the same lines that I have, right, with the front, so I don't make any mistakes. I will hold both with pins. Now remember I said 1.5, right? You can do 1 inch, 1.5, depending. Now the good thing is, if it becomes a little too big, you're able to adjust at the end. And then you're going to slant this to meet at exactly where the remember what I said about not wanting straight lines, right? So I'm going to have to curve this, so I have a perfect curve at that point. So I'm just going to use this. Now this is not compulsory. Remember, if you don't have it, you can still achieve a perfect fit without having this. Now I have my curve. I'm going to add 1 inch. That's basic. Whether you're slim or fat, there's always a 1 inch sewing allowance. If you pick any trouser and you fold it perfectly, you will notice that the back is always bigger than the front. I'm sure you have thought about it. So this is what we do. But then all of these other measurements will be exactly at this point. Remember that this is where our dart is, right? This is our dart, the extra 1 dart that we would have taken out from there. So what I do is, I'll simply fold this and then connect from this point, right? Now that it's connected, if you have a big backside, as I do, you'd want to add 1 inch so that your pant is not going below your waist and then you're struggling to pull up so nobody sees you on this. So I do 1 inch and then I slant from that point of 1 inch to exactly the same point here. This way, when I wear my trouser, I'm well covered. Nobody is asking me to adjust my blouse. If I like to wear a crop top, I'll still be perfectly fitted in my Now remember that there are some people who are big, but they don't have hips. They're not very hippie, but they are just big. When you want to do this, please do not add as much as you would add for somebody like me who is very hippie. This is because you would have an over hip, if there's any word, if there's any such word. Your hip will be over. Now for pants that have pockets, I love those parts, it's the interesting part. For pants that have pockets, you will remove the front from the back. So we have our front and then we have our back, right? If you'd like to make pockets, this is what you do. You simply measure 2 inches from the point of your original measurement up and 6 inches down, and then simply rule across. Right? So we're going to remove this. Most times I like to curve. I don't like to roll straight. I like to curve my pocket like this. This because remember I'm very hippie. So if I'm not careful, then my pockets will be sticking out, and then I'll be having additional hips when additional hip. So I'm going to leave you with a lesson here. Now I have removed the parts that would be my pocket. I'm not going to teach you how to cut the pocket. This is because I want you to have a look at this, try it out, and critically think of how to create a pocket that fits perfectly this way, covers this way, without looking shabby. I'd like you to discuss what your outcome was trying this. If possible, I'd like you to leave a feedback if you tried it and it worked and how it looks. Leave us a picture, tag us, tell us how interesting it was to create this. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. It's been an exciting time. I'm grateful that you didn't switch off and you took the time to watch. If there are any comments, any commendations, any corrections that you'd like us to take, please leave a comment for us at the comment segment. If you enjoyed this, please let us know that you enjoyed it, so it pushes us to want to do more. I'll ensure that I leave you another free message or another free class in a week if you're nice to me. Thank you and have a blessed evening.